Hey everybody, this is Ian with The Way. When was the last time you talked about truth and reality? Like the last time you talked about something uncomfortable. And I'm not talking about when you were talking with somebody and then felt uncomfortable. I mean, actually went past the superficial, like layers of a conversation and went deeper into the uncomfortable. I would imagine not recently, maybe not even over the past few months or years or maybe ever. But I keep asking myself this question. I gotta believe there's other people in the world that are doing the same. Like, why are deeper conversations so challenging to be a part of? Or if they are, why do they seem so rare? And I don't think it's because we lack intelligence. I don't think it's because we lack information, because Lord knows we don't do that. But I don't think it's because people don't care, because we know everybody cares about something. It's because depth requires vulnerability, I think, and to go deeper means accepting that, I could be wrong and my framework or views could be incomplete. My people or my group or my family or my tribe or whatever you want to call it, my social clique, might not own the whole picture or know all that there is in life, right? And that'd be a terrible thing, right? But my certainty or assurance might need improvement, or some sort of refinement, like that type of vulnerability. We just don't get to a place where that happens, comfortably or candidly. And socially, we are conditioned to protect identity more than pursue truth. Public discourse or conversations or discussions, like public discourse rewards speed over precision. Some sort of tribal alignment over careful reasoning, and even emotional intensity over intellectual humility. But this struggle is not new, right? Even in first centuries, cities like Athens were filled with philosophical debate, and there were people like Stoics and Epicureans and Platonists, and all arguing about reality and virtue and meaning and the nature of good and the nature of truth. And when Paul, as Christians, we have Paul who spoke in Athens because he spoke in Athens. And if you haven't gotten to that far in the Bible, he does that. So that's pretty cool. A little historical fact. He did not, but when he did, he didn't shout religious slogans. He reasoned, right? He spoke to people and discussed things with people, and he built arguments and quoted these people's own words and poets and little scribes on their statues and stuff for their gods that they worship. And he entered their categories and he challenged them. And even Jesus did this himself when he engaged Pharisees and Sadducees and Roman officials with questions that cut beneath assumptions, right? He didn't avoid disagreements, and he clarified categories, and that was intentional. And early Christian writers, especially Paul, used structured reasoning. And even in Romans, he anticipates objections before they're spoken. This is like philosophical rigor. This is what deep conversations are, and deep conversations have always required intellectual courage. So why do we feel that it's harder now? I think it's because beliefs are no longer just ideas. They're part of our identity. They're markers or towers or whatever you want to call them. They're these idols in our lives that we build things on. So they're paramount. They're part of our identity, right? And when beliefs fuse with identity, this works for all of us, not just anybody that's not a Christian, because Christians are so bad at this. When beliefs fuse with identity, any disagreement, almost all, but not everyone, but most disagreements feel like a form of rejection, right? Any sort of correction feels like some sort of humiliation, and any alternative perspective feels almost threatening, right? And conversations shift from this truth-seeking to this identity protection. And this is human, wildly human, right? It's not some ideology that just kind of popped up. Every worldview does this. Christians do it, and Satanists do it, and secular thinkers do it, and philosophers and critical thinkers and scientists and progressives and conservatives do it, and the religious and non-religious alike, communities do it. So if we want a deeper conversation, we have to rally around something stable for the sake of continuing some sort of connection with each other, regardless of our beliefs. And I think we must begin with some shared definitions, right? Because without shared definitions, conversations just don't happen. Either they collapse, or they're just vapid and empty, or there's a ill motive, or they just don't happen at all, right? So here's some core objective anchors that I think that we all agree on. We should really, must honestly agree on if dialogue is to function at all. Okay. First word is reality. A little lesson here. Reality is what, excuse me, reality is what exists independent of our preference. Whether one believes reality is material only or it includes some sort of metaphysical dimension, the core definition still stands, right? Reality is what is, period. Regardless of opinion, it's still there if you're not, right? So second is truth. This is a big one, right? Truth is alignment between a belief and reality, or belief in reality, or opinion in reality, right? If a statement corresponds or mirrors to what actually is, it's true. If it does not mirror, it's false. If we can't determine the connection, it's uncertain. That's okay too, right? The definition does not belong exclusively to Christianity or atheists or progressive thinkers or whatever you want to call them nowadays, or any single philosophy for that matter. It's foundational for science, medicine, and law and moral reasoning. Without connection and alignment between belief and reality, trust will and does always collapse. All right. So third word is knowledge, and we had reality and trust, and now we have knowledge. Knowledge is justified or made right. Knowledge is justified belief grounded in evidence, reason, and reliable testimony. Okay. So different worldviews, like a philosophy or a way of life, as in a worldview, different worldviews may disagree about what counts as ultimate authority. Revelation, reason, empiricism, tradition, like whatever. But all these must acknowledge that belief should aim at justification, the action of showing something to be right, not mere preference. Okay, so that's knowledge. And the fourth word is dignity. Human dignity refers to the inherent worth of a person. Christians ground this in being made in the image of God. Secular humanists grounded in shared consciousness and some form of moral equality, right? Yeah, and so many other traditions, but a lot of other traditions do ground in natural law or rational agency or some sort of social contract, spoken or unspoken. The grounding may differ, but the operational commitment to dignity must remain. Because without dignity, conversations become coercion, right? And now, alongside objective, meaning impartial, unbiased, or factual, alongside objective anchors, we must also honor a subjective experience, or a subjective meaning personal experience. And subjective experience includes our emotions, right? And personal narratives, or identity formation, or traumas, so often now traumas, or cultural memory, or a making of meaning, or meaning making, right? Like what we value, how we create that. And a subjective experience is real. It's super real. It shapes perception. It influences behavior, and it does deserve respect. Like truly deserves respect. But here's the distinction we must protect amongst ourselves and for others. Experience is real. So just stop, Christians, stop saying that people that feel something aren't real, or I feel like this is my truth or whatever. Like, it's still real to them. So don't just tear it down as if it's not. But experience is real, okay? Interpretation of experience, though, may be mistaken for all of us. So just because my experience is real, how I interpret that experience, I could be mistaken about that. Just because I think it is doesn't mean that it is, right? Even if I feel it, it still might not be how it is. And feeling rejected is real, super real. Concluding that one is objectively worthless may not be true. Okay, experiencing injustice is real. Interpreting every disagreement, though, as oppression, meaning an unjust treatment or a prolonged or cruel treatment, may not be accurate. So interpreting every disagreement, anytime we have some sort of disagreement, as some sort of form of oppression, that's may not be accurate. It might be. If it's unjust treatment or prolonged and cruel, then yeah, then it. For sure, it might be, but we must learn to say your experience matters, period, especially Christians. And we must still ask whether the interpretation corresponds to reality, though, right? So, yes, it matters, and does how you see that actually reflect and speak credible to, and gets on the same page as what is reality? What's reality? And it's not cruelty by doing this. It's to me, it's an intellectual integrity, right? There's some honesty and some sense of unity for that, right? And philosophy, I think, helps us here. We're talking about metaphysics, but I can hone this in here. Ontology, the ontology or metaphysics of ontology, which is the nature of being. Ontology asks what exists. Epistemology, or an investigation of what distinguished justified belief from opinion. Like epistemology is how do we know? So we have what exists, how do we know, and then we have phenomenology, right? It's a study of consciousness. Phenomenology asks what is it like to experience, right? So we have what exists, right? How do we know, and what's it like to experience? And when we get to those metaphysics, we kind of have an understanding of how we can appreciate somebody else's perspective, right? But confusing those categories causes most modern breakdowns, though. When phenomenology or lived experience is treated as ontology, as in what exists, conflict, serious disagreements, or disputes will follow, often do. So meaning, when a person lives a certain way, right, and how they live is treated as what actually is, this is where we have some conflict, because no matter what, it's just my experience isn't the same, right? And what is, even if it doesn't mirror to yours, still, and it depends, right? So, and then when epistemology, or how we know, is reduced to emotion, like coherence dissolves, right? There's just nothing that wants to there's nothing that wants to feel or motivated or even drives together, right? So, but every worldview must wrestle with these distinctions, right? Christian, must ask, am I defending doctrine accurately? Or am I defending a cultural tradition? Is my conviction aligned with reality, or merely inherited certainty? Like, am I certain about this because it's just always been like this, right? Secular thinkers must ask, is my skepticism or my doubt principled? Or is it moral? Is there moral grounding to it? Is my skepticism morally grounded or just reactive? Is my framework internally coherent, as in logical and reasoned, or is it selectively applied? Activists and free thinkers, need to ask and should ask, is my cause that I'm standing for grounded in objective harm, or only, I guess, subjective offense? Traditionalists or conservatives must ask, is my stability or my firmness in this rooted in truth, or maybe nostalgia, as in like a sentimental longing for the way things used to be, right? It's not about weakening conviction or belief. It's about refining and improving it, right? Truth is not threatened by examination. Reality, as in fact, in the real world, does not shift under scrutiny, right? So let us address something sensitive here, and then we'll transition off here. When we get to the word or the phrase "my truth," we've all heard this, and this is, I don't know, probably heard it 1,000 times in the last few months, but which isn't a bad thing. But when you hear "my truth," often what people mean when they say, "Well, my truth is my experience, or my interpretation, or my story, or my identity," right? And those super matter. That's so important. They're very important. They're very valuable. But objective, as an inherently essential factual truth, objective truth does not change from person to person. Okay, so if two contradictory claims or statements or beliefs describe the same aspect of reality, they can't both correspond to reality, right? They can't, in the same way, be the same way at the same time. It's just not. Something is true and something is not true. In there, it's just not how that works. And this is not religious dogma. This is logical. This is reasonable. This is a reasonable thing to think. All right, and It's not logical consistency, right? It's just not something that's holding as provable. And logic is not oppression, right? Reason is not persecution. It's the structure that allows dialogue and conversations to work and actually happen, right? And however, and this is crucial, logic, meaning reason, without compassion, meaning sympathy, often becomes weaponized, right? Sympathy without reason becomes unstable. So we need both. And Jesus modeled this and modeled something super rare, right? Which is great. So if Christians should be doing this, if they're Christians, meaning followers of Jesus and following his way and following his teachings and putting on their Jesus every day, right? So Christ modeled this, and he modeled something rare, which is what makes a call to him so unique, is because he wants us to experience the rare thing too that he modeled, that clarity without cruelty. One, meaning we're talking about the woman in the well, or the Samaritan woman at the well, or the woman caught in adultery, right? He was very clear, was very grounded, without cruelty, right? Conviction without contempt. We're talking about the rich young ruler and conversations with Nicodemus, right? He was a well-respected Jewish leader. Correction without humiliation when he restored Peter, right? And Martha, whenever she was super anxious, right? And honestly, correction with humiliation applies to every person who honestly seeks him. So it applies to you too, right? And he engaged arguments directly, but preserved dignity relentlessly, man. You never see him like tearing down some person or speaking lesser than ever, right? If anything, he builds people up over himself, right? And for some secular thinkers who may not share Christian grounding, the same principle holds though, right? Like, persuasion is stronger than forceful pressure. Evidence is stronger than outrage, okay? And dialogue is stronger than cancellation or shutting off and separation, okay? And if we want a society capable of like real conversations, we must rally and get together and really like, all right, here's the table before we start talking to it, and then we can start putting stuff on it. We must rally around reality exists, truth, meaning what is actual and objective, aligns to reality. Knowledge requires justification, meaning there's an action to be made right or just. We must rally around dignity, as in worth. And worth and dignity must be preserved and valued. And then experience matters, but must be examined, okay? So that they all got to be on the table for this. And we have to adopt a posture of disciplined humility, man. I can hold conviction or my beliefs while remaining open to refinement. It's possible. Try it. It's very doable. I can question interpretations without dismissing experience. I can disagree without dehumanizing people or depriving a person's worth. For some reason, we have the authority for that, but we don't. That's my point. Is what gives you the authority to do that? Saying things or believing things that I can pursue trust without weaponizing it. And because certainty, as in confidence in something, feels strong, right? But humility, as in a choice, a chosen view or a choice to be modest, right? Humility sustains strength. And the goal of deeper conversations is not dominance, right? It rarely works. I mean, look at all the communist countries, right? The goal of deeper conversation is not dominance, it's alignment. As in something being arranged to be straight, level. Like one's not looking up, the other one's not looking down, likewise. Alignment between belief and reality. Alignment between conviction and character, and alignment between truth and dignity. These things are paramount, and when they happen, dialogue, true dialogue, becomes possible without identity threat mixed into it. Respect becomes independent of agreement, and questioning and curiosity replaces defensiveness. Man. And growth, real growth, as an increase of a connection in this case, becomes really possible. And we begin to see one another clearly. and not as enemies. God, why we choose to do that? It's wild to me, man. But not as enemies to defeat, but as fellow seekers navigating through the same reality, right? And because reality does not bend to opinion. Truth does not dissolve under scrutiny, and understanding grows when courage and humility meet. If we can rally around these things, deeper conversations will not divide us. They can't. They'll help refine us and make us better and help us learn a little bit about ourselves too. Which, no offense, I don't think you have it all figured out. I don't think you have the perfect plan. And maybe the plan that you have, I would double check, or at least be very certain that it's a plan worth running through. Most of the things that we make mankind isn't super great. Praying for you guys. Thanks for listening.